wonderful to have Kem Sawyer with us today. And Kem is one of the original pioneers. Um, we've had some success finding students from that first year, less so with teachers, and regrettably, in terms of the teachers, there are fewer of us now than there were then. Kem is a real bank of institutional memory here. Um, so
Well, I was
Kem,
there the first year, as you remember.
pardon?
I mean, from the very first year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, I have a vague recollection of how we got to meet you in the first place and how you came to St. Louis and then how to Crossroads. I mean, can you fill us in on that?
Sure. So I met you through our friend Gene Kalish, and we were at Yale together. Gene was in graduate school, and you have known him, I think, forever.
Hmm.
So when we told Gene that we were going to St. Louis, he said, we definitely had to look you up. And so that's how we met you and Carol and Andy and Cindy. We met you right away. We
Right.
moved in July, and well, John had been here a little bit before then. So he may have met you in June, but I
Yeah.
met you at the end of July, and you were just starting the school. And I was very excited because I had done a lot of drama and wanted to teach drama, and you were open to having a drama teacher. So it was just what I wanted to do, and it was great.
It
And
was
then, but not only that, we also lived in Laclede Town,
right.
and you were in Laclede Town. Andy and Cindy were in Laclede Town, so we were all there together, and that's where the school, of course, was first located.
And it's such a unique situation because in so many ways it was like a neighborhood school. We had so many students from Laclede Town as well. And Laclede Town was a fairly racially balanced community, which was what I think all of us wanted.
Right. And
But
that's why, I mean, I was excited about the school because I mean, your whole philosophy of integrating students who were not integrated in St. Louis public schools. So it was wonderful. And then giving everyone a lot of attention.
yeah, I mean, I think we did a pretty good job of that. So you were teaching drama, but you were teaching other courses too, particularly as time went on, right?
Yes. So when that first year, which would have been 74, 75,
Right.
I taught drama, but I also worked at the Learning Center, which was
Mhm.
a professional development center for teachers in the Central
Mhm.
West End. And I taught in a program called Springboard to Learning. So I taught drama there in public schools. And I know Springboard to Learning is still going on in St. Louis. And I taught full time, I think 2 years later. I was teaching. So for 2 years, I think in Laclede Town, I taught mostly drama. And then 76 to 77, that school year,
Right.
I came on full time and taught English and also Latin and modern dance and drama. I think those were my 4 courses.
I think they were, and it brings up a lot of memories for me, and also there's some blank spots. So the memory that I have is that the first 2 years in Laclede Town, that even though there were shortcomings to that building, Peacock Alley, that there was space for drama productions. And so you were able to do them out there and kind of in that general purpose room.
Yes, yes. I know we did Midsummer Night's Dream there and Wizard of Oz,
Right.
but when I was thinking about doing this Zoom, I went up in the attic and found a box,
Yeah.
and I sent you a couple things from the box.
Right.
But one of the things I found was also um, a box that said Wizard of Oz, and it had all the different places where we did Wizard of Oz. So we performed, it was called the Community Center.
Right.
And then, but we also took the play to the neighborhood school and Wyman's school. And because it was a play for children, Wizard of Oz was for
Right.
children. So we took that to different schools. I also found, well, I'll have to send it to you.
Well, and you
Email.
remember Kevin Villers?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and Kevin first sent me, the playbill to Wizard of Oz, and he was so happy about that. And I just interviewed Logan Martin, and he was very happy about the roles that you gave him, and he thought that he had a tough time acting, but you were very patient with him.
He was great, and he was terrific. But what I started to say I found was a note and it says, of course, it's purple ink because we used mimeograph machines, but it says Arthur, Carol, Candy, John, Andy. We've scheduled 3 morning performances for The Wizard of Oz. Then give the dates in March. This means students in the play will have to miss first and second periods on Monday and Wednesday and morning classes on Thursday. They know they are responsible for work missed.
That's from you.
Yes. I thought that was very amusing that I still
You
have
could
that.
either send that to me or a copy of it. That's
Sure.
exactly the kind of thing that, on the memorabilia page we want to have because it's so real. It's not, something for PR purposes. It's the way life was lived then. And
Yes.
and you were saying to everyone, I think, adjustments are required, but I respect what you're doing and we'll work it out. And we did.
Right. Yep.
That's great. Now, what I have trouble remembering is when we were on Lindell, there was nothing in that building that would be conducive for a production, as I recall. But I'm not remembering where the plays were.
Okay. We went different places. So, and in a way, it worked to our advantage because we found these wonderful stages. And so our town, we did at the Gateway Arch in their theater. So that was down under the arch.
Right.
And we did, I think, a couple plays, including Mad Woman of Chaillot. And I think we did Mad Woman of Chaillot and Miracle Worker at Grace Methodist Church on Skinker, and they have a stage. And then one of my favorite places was the inside of Trinity Church on Euclid. And it's a Gothic church. We did Antigone there. So it was sort of a great place for Antigone. And I remember thinking the shadows that the actors created were phenomenal. So it just added a lot to the play. So those are places that I remember.
And it's so reflective of what we tried to do, which was to be resourceful, use the community, and the arch. I mean, for our town, we had crowds in the hundreds, right, or at least once.
I guess.
I think so. I think so.
I'm sure. No, I mean, it was wonderful. And, to be able to do a play at the Arch.
Yeah.
I also remember when I was doing, I think the modern dance was did we call them mini courses?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So it was a mini course in the spring, and we must have taken the bus down to the Arch and we danced outside on the Mississippi River a couple times. That was fun. Not a performance, just a regular class.
Well, that's awesome. And that's one of the themes that's come up in talking with other students was how many kids took the bi-state bus. It was a time when they were, ran more frequently than they do now, and kids felt safe and comfortable riding them. And then here you are taking a class,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you all did that all the time, Arthur. All the teachers did. I mean, you were taking people all over.
We did. And Carol, put together, the urban overnights. And one of them was on top of the old famous bar garage and one on top of one of the mansion house buildings. So Those
And,
were, go
don't
ahead.
forget Washington, D.C. Uh,
Right.
of course, you left me behind because that
I,
was right when Kate was being born. And she was born while you were in DC. So all my friends were the teachers at Crossroads who were in DC. But I was thinking about this the other day. There was one student, Lila, who did not go.
okay.
And anyway, she came to visit me in the hospital. So it was very nice.
Well, that's true. And I remember when we arrived in DC, we didn't go anywhere. We were just on the train, on the platform and called you.
Okay.
Um,
Right,
yeah,
right.
before Kate was born. And that was great. I want to ask you this about DC, where obviously you're living now, but I had some recollection, which may or may not be true, that on one of the trips we got to DC and we immediately had a soccer game against a local school, and I thought it might have been Sidwell Friends. I'm not sure. Do you have any recollection of that?
Yes. Well, I remember that you did play soccer. It was either Sidwell or Edmund Burke, but it might have
Okay.
been Sidwell. And I think I actually saw something that mentioned
Yeah, I
Sidwell.
put that in the last,
Okay, okay.
but I'm
So,
trying to get a
and then
confirmation.
we live close to both schools. So
Hmm.
after the game, you brought everybody to our house. And I think we had lemonade or something in the backyard. But I also remember that you did scavenger hunts when
Yes.
you came to DC.
Hmm.
And I think one year I helped research the scavenger hunt by going down to the mall and finding
Right.
things at the Smithsonian that you could add to the scavenger hunt. And another year, well, you came so frequently, but another
Yeah.
year, and this was later, I think, not the soccer game year, but you had everybody take the boat on the
Yes.
Potomac. Did we go to Alexandria? We went with you.
That
And
was a
Alexandria?
Civitas group. That was a
Oh,
Civitas
that
group,
was
not a
Civitas.
Crossroads group. But yes, we
Okay.
did. We went to Alexandria and um, we kind of, well, we didn't singularly pack the boat, but it was crowded
Right.
and it was a delightful evening. Yeah.
And I think maybe there were a couple Crossroads alums
Yeah.
along
I
in.
think there were, yes, like
Yes.
Jim Abbott, I think. So it occurred to me that there are probably a lot of people in the Crossroads community who don't know that much about your background in the sense of where you grew up and the fact that you and your family do have Midwest roots.
Um, sure. So, but before I talk about that,
Yep.
since you mentioned Jim, Jim
Yes.
was in a couple of the plays, and
Hmm.
I I think we only overlapped 1 year because I left in 1980, and he had been there the year before, but
Right.
he had many leading roles beforehand.
Hmm.
But then he went on to uh, teach a class at the Corcoran College of Art and Design here in
Hmm.
DC. He was living in Baltimore and had become, very academic in interior design. And he taught the interior design course. And I had been teaching writing at the Corcoran for many years. And one of the perks of being on the faculty at the Corcoran is that you could take courses. So I was looking through the course catalog and saw that Jim Abbott was teaching a class, and I was totally shocked and signed up for it. And it was an absolute terrific class. It was the history of interior design. And we went way back to 19th century and then through the Vienna secession movement, arts and crafts. We had to write papers and do projects. And Jim was a great teacher. And I just thought life has really come full circle. And I'm taking a class from one of my students.
I remember that and how excited both of you were.
Yeah, it was really neat. And and then we've seen each other occasionally, since
Right.
then and had dinner together and that kind of
Right.
thing. So your
And he
question.
he is coming in for the reunion,
Oh, good.
which we're excited
Great.
about. Yeah.
Great. And you know, I'm really sorry to miss it in person. So I will
Understood.
watch
Yeah,
whatever videos you
right.
put out. So how did we end up in St. Louis? Is that
Or well, I think
or where I grew up?
where you grew, yeah.
Okay,
And
so I grew up,
the Midwest roots in your family.
grew up in New York City,
Yeah.
and then when I was 14, moved to New Hampshire.
Okay.
Uh, had spent a lot of time before that in Kankakee, Illinois during the summers.
Hmm.
My father was from Kankakee, and my grandparents and aunt and uncle lived there. So we would go to Kankakee a lot. And we moved to St. Louis because John got a job at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And that actually had to do also with Gene Kalish. John was applying for newspaper jobs, and most of the jobs where he was applying were in the New England area. But Gene said, well, you know, the Post-Dispatch is a really great paper.
Hmm.
And John had done editorials in the summer for the Winston-Salem Journal, and it happened that the St. Louis Post-Dispatch had an opening on the editorial page. So we ended up coming to St. Louis, which
And
was
that
cool.
very fortuitous for all of us. But also, how about how your first name came about?
So my mother grew up in Kansas City, and her father, so my grandfather, was James P. Kem, who was a senator from Missouri. So I do have a lot of Missouri roots or
Yeah,
Midwest roots.
yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. So getting back to Crossroads days, I have these very vivid recollections of some evenings at Carol and my place on Lindell with the ping pong table and the firehouse ping pong. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, yes. And I think we must have learned that from you. And we have since played in our own backyard, and sort of firehouse ping pong or round robin.
Yeah, right.
Yes, I loved it. It was really fun.
I I had no idea before then how competitive John was.
Oh, God.
He did not like to lose a bit.
No, especially when it comes to ping pong.
Right, right. That was fun. So then the circumstances, well, before we leave the Crossroads days, is there anything else you want to say about them? And maybe in particular, we had 75 students in an old home on Lindell. And I mean, it really was packed to the gills. I remember you helping us painting the walls before we moved in there. Andy found us that building when I think most of the rest of us were in Chicago on a school trip, and he got it from the Archdiocese in St. Louis, and we paid $500 a month for this building that obviously was going to. I think they call it a triple net lease, where the tenant has to pay for all the improvements. And we did a lot of painting and a lot of fixing up, but it still, it was an odd place for a school. And if you remember, one thing I
Oh,
remember was Tara Duffy teaching in the basement.
okay. I thought it was a great place for school.
Yeah.
I got my Latin class in the basement, but I
Okay.
taught English upstairs on the
Okay.
second floor. And I liked it. I mean, all right, apart from the basement, it had a lot of light.
Right.
And one thing I have really missed after leaving Crossroads is when I would come in the morning, the office was to the right, and
Hmm.
we were always there early. I think Karen Messenger
Right.
was also
And
there.
Etheldra Hollis.
And we all read the Globe Democrat because that was when I think St. Louis still had two papers, and the Globe
Mm-hmm.
Democrat was the morning paper. And it was not the paper John worked for, but the paper that we read, you know, every single page of, because it was the morning paper and we got to talk
Mhm.
about the news and the headlines. And I've just thought later, as we move on, nobody's reading the same paper every morning. So we're not having the same discussions. So we're not talking about it, the news. So anyway, I just want you to know, Arthur, that I really miss talking about the headlines every morning with you. That's one very strong memory. And then the other thing I just want to say on this video, that it was just the opportunity really of a lifetime to be able to teach and direct plays. And I got to choose the plays that I wanted to direct, which was really, really fun. I do remember spending a lot of time trying to find plays that had strong female leads, because a lot of plays have strong male leads.
Right.
We had a lot of girls looking for good parts, and I think we found some good plays, and that was really fun.
Are there any particular students who you remember that, having these roles were just really wonderfully enjoyable and growth opportunities?
Well, you already mentioned, I think, you mentioned Kevin, you mentioned
Yeah.
Jill Abbott. Jill Hazelton had
Yes.
several leads. She was the Mad Woman in Mad Women of Chaillot. And there were, Susan McClellan,
Yeah.
there were so many. And I've kept in touch with Jerome Schaefer's,
Oh, good.
who was absolutely fabulous, and has gone on to become an actor and is on
Right.
Broadway. And that's been great. But he got his start at Crossroads. We're also Facebook friends, and he's always very nice uh, to me on my birthday and things like that. And let's see, I've kept well. Another person I remember is Alan Duffy, who was
Yep.
in uh, several plays. And John was in New York City on a work trip with taking a journalist to schools to talk about his work, the
Mhm.
journalist's work.
Right.
And he ended up going to the school where Alan Duffy is teaching in New
Oh,
York City. And Alan ran into him. And according to John, the first thing Alan did was get down on his knees and recite the lines from Romeo and Juliet that he had. And he was Benvolio in Romeo and Juliet. And this was decades later, maybe 30 years. I don't remember, after he was in the play, but he still remembered his lines. So then I wasn't on that trip, but John called me up and said, "Guess who I saw today?" And I just couldn't believe, A, that he had seen Alan Duffy, but B, that Alan remembered his lines from the play. So that was really nice. Oh, and
that
you
is,
mentioned Logan Martin,
yeah.
who also um, was in place. But I did find, I'm going to send it to you, because you have the Wizard of Oz program,
Right.
and then I found the Romeo and Juliet program
That,
too.
that would be great. And you mentioned the Globe Democrat, and it reminded me that with a Civitas project we had this past summer, Campaign 24 um, workshop, the students put together a print newspaper, 20 pages, tabloid, and so many of the kids had never really touched a printed newspaper in their life before.
Oh
It
boy.
was remarkable. And we could not find a place in St. Louis to have it printed, other than the Post Dispatch, and that wasn't going to work economically. So we had to find a company in rural Oklahoma that would print it for us. I'll send you and John a copy of it because I think the kids
Wow.
did a remarkable job. Yeah.
Right.
But
Well, Arthur, I also came across two uh, collages of photos from plays that
mhm.
used to hang on the the hall, our um the hall and on our staircase. They've now been replaced by pictures of our grandchildren, but for many, many years they were there. And I was
Yeah.
looking, I still have them in their frames, and I was looking at them today. It was Pygmalion and Mad Women of Chaillot, and Robin Potash had
Yes.
several leads. So I also like looking at the costumes that they wore, because many of the costumes were my clothes that I had for a
That's
very
great.
long time and may still have in a closet. So it was really funny.
Kim, I wanted to ask you, you did so much teaching after Crossroads. Did the Crossroads experience help you with your other teaching?
Oh, for
Give you a good
sure.
background?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
No, it was a great background. And um, for one thing, I found out at Crossroads that I love teaching. And I, you learn a lot your first year or your first couple of years
Right.
teaching. So, and I went on to teach then at the Corcoran College of Art and Design. I taught writing to graphic design students. So it was very interesting teaching in an art school where I think people work really hard. And some of the students had previous degrees or previous careers, and they were very proficient. They might have been history majors. Some of them had come straight out of high school and had a real talent for art, but been told that they were not good writers. And my philosophy is there is no such thing as somebody who's not a good writer.
Right.
And so part of what I wanted to do was sort of undo this I can't do it feeling. And, I certainly think that at Crossroads, uh, we, we had the same philosophy and, uh, could reach many different students. I also found out as a teacher that I really like having students who are not all the same and, have different skills and
Yeah.
talents and
Fortunately, we had
background.
that at Crossroads,
Yeah,
which is great as
right,
well.
right.
So I want to ask you another question because, being in the world of arts, and we have a mutual friend obviously in Rocco Landesman who has been very passionate about how the arts seem to be somewhat succumbing to the power of political correctness, and artists can't do or can't show things that they did in the past. Do you see that as happening? And if so, does it concern you?
I don't think that's the world that I'm in right now,
Okay.
uh, because I left the Corcoran about 15 years ago to work at the Pulitzer Center. And I
Hmm.
would say the time, and was at the Corcoran for 15 years, but while I was there, I think the students, and maybe this was just a factor of being at the Corcoran and we were working on their shows, but we never censored them in any way or made them feel like their work would be inappropriate or not appreciated. So uh, so that's just not something that I had to deal with. It's true that towards the last few years that I was at the Corcoran, there was more of an emphasis on using design for for social justice. But that was something that I embraced. So I was very
Right.
happy if my students wanted to do that. And I didn't, but I don't think we pressured them to do that. That was just something that they did. And, since then I've been working with college students and graduate students at the Pulitzer Center, and have given them grants to do reporting projects. And I don't think I, I hope that in choosing the students who receive the grants that, we're open to many different ways of thinking. And, we think it's important to show multiple points of view and to bridge divides. So I don't think we would ever turn somebody away just because we didn't agree with them.
And finally, there are people in the Crossroads community, particularly from the early days, who don't know what the Pulitzer Center is. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, what you and John have done, and what you are planning to do for the balance of your lives.
Sure. So John started the Pulitzer Center in 2006, and it is a nonprofit journalism and education organization, and was started uh, to provide opportunities for journalists to cover stories that might not get covered otherwise. John himself had done a lot of reporting in other countries, and he really liked doing it. He thought it was very important. A lot of the newspapers here in the United States were cutting back on foreign bureaus. So giving journalists an opportunity to still cover these stories was very important. And we got funding from the Pulitzer's family to start the organization. And then after that, different foundations also over the years have been very generous in supporting the Pulitzer Center. And we cover stories that have to do with climate change, global health, human rights, and also now, well, did I say climate change?
Yeah. Hmm.
And artificial intelligence.
So interesting, and the nonprofit that we have now, Civitas, we've worked a lot with the Pulitzer Center, with outreach, the Global Gateway outreach program that John started, and journalists coming to St. Louis, and had some wonderful programs at Crossroads. Mark Norwood, who is now one of the co-heads of Crossroads. We went to several of his classes, and journalists were really struck by how much the Crossroads kids seem to be good critical thinkers and to be empathetic. So,
I'm not surprised.
yep, that's a good circle. So, I think that's where we are. But, Kim, one way or another, we're all going to get together. I hope that I haven't been to DC in a while. You're going to India, is that correct?
Yes, yes. Leaving on Monday, and we'll be there
Okay.
for 6 weeks. So that's why I have to miss the reunion.
Right, right.